It was a typical day for Jason as he walked into his apartment after a long day of work. The evening was calm, the only sound the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Jason had just moved into this new place, excited about a fresh start in a different city. He wasn't expecting any surprises today, just another quiet evening. But everything changed the moment he opened the door to his apartment. Standing in the living room was a woman, or what appeared to be a woman. She was tall, with pale green skin that seemed to shimmer slightly under the dim light. Her eyes were wide, round, and glowed a soft shade of purple. Jason froze in the doorway, unsure whether this was a joke or some kind of mistake. Hey," Jason said, trying to sound casual despite his confusion. "Can I help you?" The woman turned to face him, her eyes lighting up with recognition. "You must be Jason. I'm your new roommate, Illyria." Her voice was calm and smooth, almost melodic. Jason blinked, still unsure how to react. "Roommate," Jason repeated, looking around the room as if expecting someone to jump out and yell, "Gotcha." But no one did. There she was, standing in his living room, with no explanation or warning. Illyria smiled, a bit awkwardly. "Yes, I've been assigned to stay here. We will be sharing the apartment." Jason rubbed his eyes, convinced that maybe he was just tired or imagining things. "Wait, you're from another country, right? Is this some kind of cultural thing? This is a prank, right?" Illyria tilted her head, her purple eyes narrowing slightly. "No prank. I am not from your country, or even from your planet. I am from Zoriath, a planet far beyond your solar system." Jason stared at her for a moment, trying to process what she just said. This couldn't be real. His brain was trying to come up with any explanation that made sense, but there was none. "Zoriath? You're kidding, right?" Illyria didn't laugh. She simply stepped closer, her movements smooth and fluid, as if she was gliding through the air. She reached out and gently touched Jason's arm. Her skin was cool to the touch, but there was something strangely comforting about it. Jason pulled his arm back, unsure what to make of this strange situation. "I understand this is a lot to take in," Illyria said softly. "I know I look different, but I assure you, I mean no harm. I'm simply here to stay until my mission is complete." Jason took a step back, his mind racing. He had never been one to believe in alien stories or science fiction. It was all just entertainment for him. Something to watch on TV after a long day. But now, here she was, standing in front of him, an actual alien. The evidence was undeniable, and Jason couldn't just brush it off. "Mission? What kind of mission?" Jason finally managed to ask, his voice shaking slightly. Illyria's expression shifted, and she seemed to hesitate for a moment. "I have been sent here to observe your species and learn more about your culture. There is much I need to understand. That's why I've been assigned to live with you, so I can learn directly from humans." Jason blinked, trying to understand. "Wait, hold on. So you're saying you're some sort of intergalactic student, and you're living with me as my roommate?" Illyria nodded. "Yes, that is correct. I have been placed here to integrate and observe." Jason's mind was spinning. He didn't know whether to laugh or scream. He opened his mouth to say something, but the words didn't come out. How could he possibly respond to something like this? Okay. I guess. Welcome," he said weakly. Illyria smiled. "Thank you." Jason took a deep breath, still trying to process the situation. "So, how long will you be here? And what exactly do you need from me? Are you going to be living here full-time?" "Yes, I will be here for an indefinite amount of time," Illyria explained. "I'm not sure exactly how long my stay will last. It depends on the success of my mission." Jason nodded slowly, though he still wasn't sure if he was dreaming. "All right. Well, I guess we'll figure this out as we go. I just didn't expect this. I'm a little surprised, to be honest." Illyria smiled again, her purple eyes twinkling. "I understand. I know it's a lot to take in, but I assure you, I will do my best to adapt to your way of life." Jason gave a half-hearted laugh, still unsure whether he was losing his mind or if this was some bizarre new reality. "Right. Okay. So, where do I sleep then?" Illyria's eyes lit up in an unexpected way. "Actually, I was hoping we could share a sleeping space. I cannot sleep without physical contact. Cuddling, as your species calls it." Jason blinked again. "Cuddling. Wait, hold on. You want to cuddle with me?" Illyria's gaze became more serious. "Yes, it is necessary for my rest. I cannot sleep without it." Jason felt his stomach drop. This was insane. Was he really being asked to share his bed with an alien? He didn't know how to respond. He'd never thought his first day with a new roommate would be anything like this. "Well, that's a lot to ask," Jason muttered, his mind racing. "But I guess I don't have much choice, do I?" Illyria nodded, her face earnest. "I need the contact to sleep, Jason. If you cannot provide it, I will not be able to rest properly, and that could cause problems." Jason was stuck. What else could he say? He didn't want to upset her, but he had never signed up for anything like this. Still, there was something oddly captivating about Illyria, something that made him want to help. "Okay, I'll try. But this is going to be weird," Jason said, feeling a bit uneasy, but also intrigued. Illyria's face softened in gratitude. "Thank you, Jason. You are most kind." As Jason tried to digest this new reality, he couldn't help but wonder, what else was Illyria hiding? And what kind of mission could an alien possibly have on Earth? Little did he know, his life was about to get a lot more complicated. Jason stood there, processing the bizarre situation he had just agreed to. His mind was spinning, trying to understand what just happened. Illyria, his new roommate, was an alien who couldn't sleep without cuddling. The absurdity of it all made him want to pinch himself. Was he dreaming? Or was this just some crazy new chapter of his life? He looked at Illyria, who was now sitting on the couch, her legs folded beneath her. She appeared to be waiting patiently, as if this was all perfectly normal. And for her, maybe it was. But for Jason, everything felt upside down. I don't know how to do this," Jason muttered, scratching the back of his neck. "I mean, I don't even know how to begin with this situation. I wasn't exactly prepared for an intergalactic roommate who needs cuddles to sleep." Illyria turned her glowing purple eyes toward him. "I understand it is difficult for you to comprehend, but it is a necessity for me. I am not like you. My species is biologically different. Physical connection helps me recharge and rest." Jason rubbed his temples, trying to make sense of it all. "Recharge? What do you mean by that? You're not a machine, right?" Illyria's expression remained serene. "Not a machine, but my species requires a specific type of energy to function properly. Physical touch is one way for us to restore it. Without it, we cannot fully rest, and our bodies suffer." Jason blinked, trying to wrap his head around her explanation. He had heard of weird things happening in sci-fi stories, but this was real life, wasn't it? He had a strange alien in his apartment who needed cuddles, and worse yet, he had agreed to help her. Illyria seemed to notice the confusion on his face. She stood and approached him slowly, her movement graceful, almost ethereal. "I do not wish to be a burden to you, Jason. I know this must be overwhelming, but I will do my best to stay out of your way otherwise. This is a small request, one that will help me function properly." Jason felt a flicker of sympathy for her. She wasn't asking for much, just a little physical contact. But still, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to be stuck in a situation far beyond his control. "Okay, I'll try," Jason said, his voice sounding unsure. "But we need to set some ground rules here. I'm not used to, well, any of this, and I don't know what's going to happen next." Illyria nodded graciously. "I understand. I will respect your boundaries, but I ask only for what I need to survive." Jason sighed. He had always been the type to help others, but this was new territory. He wasn't even sure if there were any rules for dealing with an alien roommate, especially one who needed physical contact to sleep. Trying to shift the conversation, Jason asked, "So, what exactly is this mission you're on? I mean, you said you were sent to observe humans, but why here? Why me?" Illyria's eyes seemed to brighten at the question. She sat back down on the couch, her expression thoughtful. "My species has been observing your planet for many years. We were curious about your potential, your culture, your emotions, your way of life. But we never made direct contact until now. I was chosen for this mission because of my unique abilities to blend in with humans." Jason leaned against the kitchen counter, trying to digest her words. "And how long are you going to stay? I mean, is this going to be forever?" Illyria looked up at him, a subtle sadness in her eyes. "I do not know. It depends on how much I learn and how successful my mission is. If I fulfill my purpose, I will return to Zoriath. If not, I may remain here longer." Jason was quiet for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. He had never met someone who had such an uncertain future. Not that he could really relate. His life had been mostly straightforward. But this was something else entirely. "How do you learn about humans? What do you observe exactly?" Jason asked, genuinely curious. Illyria smiled softly, her eyes glinting with interest. "I observe your interactions with each other, your emotions, your relationships, your struggles and triumphs. I learn about how you communicate, how you solve problems, and how you adapt. The more I understand, the more I can bring back to Zoriath to help my people understand yours." Jason thought about that. "So, you're basically doing research on us?" "Yes," Illyria confirmed, nodding. "But it is more than just research. I want to understand your species fully, your hopes, your dreams, your fears. I want to learn what makes humans human." Jason could feel his curiosity growing. There was something both fascinating and unsettling about Illyria's mission. To learn about humanity, to study emotions, to experience human life through the eyes of an alien. It sounded like something out of a sci-fi novel. But this was his life now, and as strange as it was, he couldn't turn away. "Okay," Jason said, a reluctant smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I guess that explains a lot. But we'll need some boundaries. I don't mind helping you with this mission, but I need to know that we're both clear about what's going on here." Illyria nodded quickly. "Of course, Jason. I will respect your boundaries. I only ask that you help me in my efforts to understand your kind, and that you provide me with what I need to rest and function properly." Jason was quiet for a moment, weighing his options. He didn't exactly have a lot of choices in this situation, but he figured he might as well make the best of it. "All right. So no cuddling unless it's necessary, right?" he said with a half-joking tone. Illyria smiled, though there was a hint of seriousness behind her expression. "Yes, Jason. It is necessary for me to rest, but I will be respectful and not overstep any boundaries you set." Jason nodded, trying to convince himself that he could handle this. An alien roommate wasn't something he had ever imagined in his wildest dreams, but now that it was happening, he couldn't just walk away. He would have to learn to live with it. But what he didn't know was that the arrival of Illyria in his life was only the beginning. Strange things were about to unfold, and his world would never be the same again. Jason lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing with thoughts about Illyria. The whole situation felt surreal. The idea of sharing a space with an alien, someone from another world, was bizarre on so many levels. He had never imagined something like this happening in his life. Yet here she was, sitting just in the next room, someone whose very presence defied everything he knew about reality. He had agreed to let her stay, and despite the oddity of it all, he couldn't help but feel a strange curiosity growing inside him. He wanted to know more about her mission, her world, and why she needed to be so close to him in the first place. but the thought of being trapped in a situation where cuddling was necessary for her to sleep, that was a bit much for Jason to wrap his mind around. As the night stretched on, Jason heard Illyria moving around in the living room. The sound of her soft steps almost ethereal. Despite everything, there was something oddly calming about the way she moved. It was like she belonged to a world far more advanced than his own. A world where the simple human comforts Jason took for granted were not enough to keep someone like her at ease. He sighed and stood up, deciding that maybe a conversation would help clear things up. If nothing else, it might give him some peace of mind. He didn't know exactly how this was going to play out, but avoiding Illyria didn't seem like the best option. Jason walked into the living room, where Illyria was sitting on the couch, her glowing eyes fixed on something invisible, as if she were lost in thought. The soft purple hue of her skin looked almost otherworldly under the dim lights of his apartment. She turned toward him as he entered, her expression calm, but he noticed the slight flicker of apprehension in her gaze. "Hey, Illyria," Jason started, his voice low. "Can we talk?" Illyria gave him a gentle smile. "Of course, Jason. What is on your mind?" Jason hesitated for a moment before taking a seat on the armrest of the couch, just far enough to maintain a comfortable distance. "I've been thinking about this whole situation. I get that you need the physical contact to sleep, but it's kind of hard for me to understand, you know. I'm used to having my space, and now there's all this extra stuff to think about." Illyria nodded thoughtfully, her glowing eyes never leaving his face. "I understand. This is a difficult adjustment for you. My species and yours are fundamentally different in many ways, and I know it must be hard for you to comprehend what I need." Jason bit his lip, considering her words. "It's not just that. It's the whole thing, really. I mean, you're not even from here. You're not human. And yet, here we are, living together. It's a lot to take in, Illyria." There was a long pause as Illyria seemed to process his words. Then she sighed and leaned back against the couch, her long ethereal hair spilling out behind her like liquid silver. "I understand that this is overwhelming, but you must know, I did not choose this situation lightly. My mission here is important, and I have been sent to learn from humans, to understand your species in a way no one from my world ever has. But to do that, I need your cooperation. I need your trust." Jason frowned slightly, unsure of where the conversation was going. "Trust? I mean, I guess I trust you not to hurt me, but trust with this whole mission thing. I don't even know what you're really here for." Illyria's eyes softened as she looked at him. "I understand. You are not the first human I have met, but you are the first I have lived with. The others I observe from a distance, without interfering. But my mission now requires me to integrate with your society. I must learn how to navigate it, how to understand your culture, your emotions, and the complexities of your relationships." Jason shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. "But why me? Why did you have to stay with me? Couldn't you find someone else to help with this research?" Illyria's expression grew more serious. "It was not by choice. You were chosen because of your unique ability to empathize with others. Your kindness, your willingness to help when needed, it made you an ideal candidate. My species has been monitoring humans for a long time, and through our observations, we found that you were someone who could guide me through this experience." Jason blinked, taken aback. "Wait, so you've been watching me? You've been following me around, studying me?" Illyria's eyes widened slightly, and she quickly shook her head. "Not directly, Jason. We have no intention of invading your privacy. But through our advanced technology, we observe the behavior of humans. It's not an invasion. It's a way for us to understand your species as a whole." Jason felt a strange mix of relief and discomfort. It was one thing to think that he was being observed in the sense of a scientific study, but another to realize that someone, an alien, no less, had been monitoring him. His life wasn't exactly exciting, but knowing that it had been watched, even in passing, made him feel strangely exposed. But that still doesn't explain why you need me, Jason said, his voice a little quieter now. Why do I have to be the one to help you? Why couldn't you just find another way? Illyria gave a small, almost sad smile. Because, Jason, there is something in your world that I cannot understand on my own. There is an energy, an emotional energy, that humans possess. It is not something that my species has, and it is not something we can replicate. To truly understand humanity, I need to experience it. To do that, I need to live among you, to share your emotions and your struggles. Only then will I be able to fully understand what it means to be human. Jason sat back, trying to process what she had said. The thought of someone, especially an alien, trying to understand emotions on such a deep level was a little unnerving. But at the same time, it was fascinating. I'm still not sure how I fit into all of this, Jason said, finally looking her in the eyes. I'm just a regular guy. I don't have anything special about me. What do you need from me that you can't find in the rest of the world? Illyria met his gaze, her expression unreadable. You have something that others do not, Jason. You have an open heart. That is why I need you. Jason wasn't sure whether to be flattered or more confused. An open heart. What did that even mean? But before he could voice his thoughts, Illyria added, in time, you will understand. But for now, I need your trust. It is the first step in my journey here. Jason took a deep breath and nodded slowly, still unsure but willing to try. If nothing else, he could help her. At least for now. What he didn't know was that as he agreed to help Illyria, things were about to take an unexpected turn. The simple request for a cuddle might have been strange, but it was only the beginning of a deeper, more dangerous path. And soon, Jason would realize that his life was about to change forever. Jason woke up to the sound of Illyria's soft voice calling from the other room. The sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting a soft glow across the room. He groggily opened his eyes, and for a brief moment, he thought the events of the past few days had all been some kind of strange dream. But when he sat up and saw the familiar surroundings of his apartment, the truth came crashing back. Illyria was real, and she wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. As he stood up and stretched, Jason couldn't help but feel a deep unease. His mind had been working overtime trying to piece together everything she had shared with him so far. An alien from another world, here to study humans. But she wasn't just an observer. She needed something from him, something far more intimate than he had initially anticipated. He rubbed his temples, trying to push the thoughts away for a moment. He couldn't focus on the weirdness of it all right now. There was something more pressing on his mind, something that had been nagging him ever since their conversation the night before. What did she really want? Why did she keep needing to be so close? He wasn't sure if he could keep up with the emotional and physical closeness she required to feel comfortable, but Illyria seemed to think that he was the key to understanding something far bigger than either of them could have imagined. Jason walked into the living room, where Illyria was sitting on the couch, her glowing eyes trained on the window as she observed the outside world. She had made herself comfortable in the space, familiar yet still a little strange. He could feel the air shift as soon as he entered, as if the energy in the room subtly changed to accommodate her presence. "Good morning, Jason," Illyria said, her voice smooth and almost melodic, though there was a hint of uncertainty behind her words. "Did you sleep well?" Jason hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I guess. But there's something I need to talk to you about. I've been thinking about all of this. Your mission, the cuddling thing, and how this is affecting both of us." Illyria tilted her head slightly, her expression becoming more serious. "What are you concerned about, Jason?" Jason sat down across from her, running a hand through his hair. "It's just, I'm trying to understand how this whole thing works. I get that you need my emotional energy or whatever, but how does that even work? I mean, I don't know what you're asking of me. I've never been in a situation like this before, and I don't know if I'm the right person for this." Illyria's eyes softened as she watched him, and for a brief moment, Jason thought he saw a glimmer of something beyond just curiosity, perhaps a hint of sadness. I understand your hesitation, Jason. You don't have the knowledge I do about how my species functions, but I believe you have something we need. It's not just about the physical connection. It's about how you humans process and express your emotions. We cannot replicate it, and that is what I need to understand. Jason furrowed his brow. But you're saying you don't know how emotions work. That's hard to believe. You're an alien. You must have emotions, right? Illyria paused, seemingly considering his words before she spoke again. It's complicated. My species experiences emotions, but they are vastly different from yours. The way you express your feelings, through touch, through closeness, through the connection between beings, that is something foreign to me. My people do not experience emotions in the same way. We process them logically, systematically. But what I have learned from your species is that emotion is not just a reaction. It is a force. It drives you in ways that are unpredictable, powerful. Jason sat back, processing her words. He wasn't sure if he fully understood what she meant, but he could sense that there was a depth to what she was saying. Maybe this was more than just some scientific experiment. Maybe Illyria was truly trying to understand something about humanity that even she didn't have the answers to. But why me? Jason asked, his voice quieter now. Why did you choose me for this? I'm just a guy. I don't think I'm anything special. Illyria's gaze softened, and she leaned forward slightly, her eyes locking onto his. You're special, Jason. Your kindness, your willingness to embrace the unknown, that is something that makes you unique. I need to experience what it's like to understand human connection from someone who doesn't shy away from it. That's why you were chosen. Jason wasn't sure what to make of that. Was it because of his kindness that he was now living with an alien, sharing his space, and to an extent, his life? It didn't make a lot of sense, but Illyria was insistent. And despite the weirdness, Jason couldn't deny that he wanted to understand what she was going through. He wanted to know more about her, about where she came from, and why her species needed to study humans in such an intimate way. You've been talking about emotions and connection, but what does this mean for me? Jason asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. If I'm supposed to help you understand this, how do I do that? What does it involve? Illyria remained quiet for a moment, her gaze thoughtful. It involves trust, Jason. Emotional trust, physical trust. I know it's difficult, and I can sense your reluctance. But to learn, I must experience things firsthand. You are my guide in this world. I can only understand human connection by engaging with it. That is why I need your help. Jason felt a lump form in his throat. The weight of her words was beginning to settle in. She wasn't just asking for something as simple as physical contact. She was asking for his emotional investment, his trust in a way that no one had ever asked of him before, and he wasn't sure he was ready for that level of involvement. But he also couldn't ignore the growing curiosity inside him. Something about Illyria's honesty, the vulnerability in her voice, made him want to keep going, to push through his discomfort and see this through. For better or for worse, he had already agreed to help her, and there was no turning back now. You really don't understand human connection, do you? Jason murmured. I mean, it's hard for you to grasp. Illyria's eyes lowered, a faint, almost imperceptible sigh escaping her lips. No, Jason, it is not that I don't understand. It is that I am not capable of experiencing it in the same way you do. And that is what I need to learn. To feel it in the same way you do. And for that, I need you. I need you to show me the human experience. Jason nodded, his heart racing. He still didn't fully understand what was being asked of him, but it was clear now that this was bigger than anything he could have imagined. There was more at stake here than just some alien experiment. The connection Illyria was seeking wasn't just a simple physical one. It was an emotional bond that would change everything. And in that moment, Jason knew one thing for sure. Nothing in his life would ever be the same again. Jason stood in the kitchen, staring blankly at the mug of coffee he had just made. His mind raced as he tried to process everything Illyria had shared with him over the past few days. There was a deep sense of confusion inside him, mixed with curiosity and a growing sense of responsibility. How had his life turned into this? How had he become an emotional guide to an alien who needed something from him that he didn't fully understand? As he absent-mindedly sipped his coffee, he felt a shift in the air, a subtle change in the room's energy. It was Illyria. Of course, Jason had learned to sense her presence, even when she wasn't in his direct line of sight. He turned to see her standing in the doorway of the kitchen, her alien form still a strange sight to him. Despite the vast differences between them, there was something oddly comforting about her presence. It wasn't that he understood her completely. It was more like they were both trying to understand each other, and that made the whole situation feel strangely intimate. "You're quiet today," Illyria said, her voice as smooth as ever, though there was a hint of concern in it. Jason sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm just trying to figure out what this means. I mean, everything we've talked about so far. It's a lot to take in. You say you need to experience human emotions, but I still don't know exactly what that involves. It's overwhelming." Illyria's eyes softened, and she stepped closer. "I know it is. I didn't expect this to be easy. You're the first human I've encountered who's been willing to help me understand. And the things I need to learn, they go beyond just physical touch or proximity. There's so much more to the way humans connect emotionally." Jason turned to face her, the weight of her words sinking in. "So this is really about more than just us cuddling or whatever it is you want from me?" "Yes," Illyria replied simply. "It's about you showing me the depth of human connection. Emotions, love, friendship, fear, trust, they all have different layers, and I want to experience all of them. But not just from an outsider's perspective. I want to understand them in the way you do. I want to feel them, to truly grasp what they mean." Jason couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy. He had never been the emotional type, always the practical one. But Illyria's quest to understand emotions on a deeper level struck a chord within him. She wasn't just asking for something selfish or superficial. She was asking for a kind of understanding that could change her entire existence. "You really don't get it, do you?" Jason muttered, half to himself. Illyria tilted her head, her glowing eyes watching him with a mixture of curiosity and empathy. "I understand that you are confused, Jason, but I need your help. I need to learn what it feels like to experience the full spectrum of human emotions. And I know that by connecting with you, by experiencing these things with you, I can gain that understanding." Jason's heart skipped a beat. The more Illyria spoke, the more he realized just how serious this was. This wasn't just a strange request from an alien who needed physical closeness. It was something deeper, something profound. If he agreed to this, he would be helping Illyria connect to the very core of what made humans human. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," Jason began, his voice quieter now, "about how you need to experience emotions like we do. And honestly, I don't know if I'm the right person for this. I don't have all the answers. I've never been the kind of guy who's really in touch with his feelings. I've always just gone through the motions, you know." Illyria stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. "That is why you are the right person, Jason. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to be willing to experience it. Emotions don't need to be understood perfectly to be felt. And that's something I can learn from you." Her words hit him harder than he expected. He had never considered his own emotional landscape as something that could teach someone else. He had always been more focused on the practical, the logical side of life. But Illyria's sincerity made him realize that maybe he did have something to offer her. Maybe, just maybe, his own lack of emotional depth could be the key to helping her understand the complexities of human connection. But that didn't make it any easier. The idea of opening up, of letting someone, especially an alien, into the most vulnerable parts of himself was terrifying. He didn't know how to do it. He didn't know how to let her see all the things he kept hidden from everyone else. He had built walls around himself for a reason, and now this alien, who wasn't even from his world, was asking him to tear them down. "I don't know if I can do this," Jason confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. Illyria's expression softened even further. "You don't have to do it all at once. I don't expect you to be perfect. I just want to learn. I just need your willingness, Jason. That is all." Jason met her gaze, and for the first time, he saw something in her eyes that wasn't just curiosity or determination. It was trust. She was trusting him with something far more precious than he had ever realized. She wasn't just asking for his time or his company. She was asking for his emotional vulnerability. And in that moment, Jason knew that he couldn't turn his back on her. He didn't know where this journey would take them, or how long it would last. But one thing was clear. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about helping Illyria experience something that, despite all their differences, they both shared: human connection. "I'll help you," Jason said, his voice firm now, though his heart still raced with uncertainty. "But I need to know that this is something you're truly ready for. Because once we start this, there's no turning back." Illyria nodded slowly, her expression serious but calm. "I'm ready, Jason. I've never been more ready." With those words, Jason felt something shift between them, a subtle yet undeniable connection. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew that their paths had crossed for a reason. Whatever happened next, he would face it with her. Because now, they were in this together. Jason stood in the living room, staring at the alien artifact Illyria had brought into the apartment. It was a small, shimmering sphere that pulsed with a soft, iridescent light. He had seen it countless times before, but today it seemed to hold a deeper meaning. Illyria had mentioned it several times, telling him that it was a symbol of her people's way of connecting emotionally. It was supposed to enhance the emotional bonds between beings, something she could use to better understand human emotions. But what exactly did that mean for him? Jason had agreed to help her, but the weight of the task was slowly sinking in. "Are you sure this is going to help?" he asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "I mean, what happens if it's too much for either of us? What if I'm not ready for whatever this thing does?" Illyria, standing across the room, looked at him with an intensity he had come to associate with her deep curiosity about the human condition. Her eyes seemed to glow brighter as she took a step closer, her voice soothing as she responded. "I understand your fear, Jason. It's a lot to ask of you. But this artifact, this connection, it's a bridge. It will allow us to feel what the other feels, more deeply than just physical touch or proximity." Jason ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. He had always been someone who thought logically, someone who relied on reason over emotion. But the more time he spent with Illyria, the more he realized that there was no escaping the emotional depth of this whole situation. She needed him, not just for companionship, but to help her understand the very essence of what it meant to be human. "I don't know if I can give you what you need, Illyria," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've never been good at this emotional stuff. I keep my distance from people, from feelings. I've always been that way." Illyria's expression softened, and she took another step toward him, the warmth of her presence filling the room. "That's why you're the one I need, Jason. I don't need you to be perfect. I don't need you to have all the answers. I just need you to be willing to let me in." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. He didn't want to let her in. He had spent his entire life keeping people at arm's length, guarding his emotions like they were some kind of weakness. But here she was, an alien, asking him to open up in ways he didn't think he was capable of. The irony wasn't lost on him. For a moment, the room was quiet. Jason's heart pounded in his chest as he looked at Illyria, who was standing before him, waiting. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing on him, but something about the way she was looking at him, the trust, the vulnerability, struck him to his core. "I've never done this before," he said finally, his voice shaky. "I don't know how to open up like that. I've never had someone look at me the way you do. I've never had someone depend on me for something so personal. Illyria reached out, placing a hand on his arm. The warmth of her touch was unlike anything Jason had ever felt. It wasn't just physical warmth. It was emotional, like she was sharing a part of herself with him. I don't need you to be perfect, Jason, she repeated, her voice gentle yet firm. I just need you to be here with me. We don't have to understand everything right away. We just need to take it one step at a time. Let me feel what you feel. Let me experience the emotions you keep locked away. Jason felt a shiver run down his spine. There was no turning back now. He had agreed to this, and now it was time to take the leap. All right, he said, his voice quiet but steady. I'll do it, but you have to promise me something. Illyria raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What do you want me to promise? You have to promise me that you won't leave, no matter what. I'm not ready for this, and I don't know if I'll be able to give you what you need, but I'm not going to back out now. So if we're doing this, I need to know you're here for the long haul. Illyria smiled, the expression warm and reassuring. I promise, Jason. I'm not going anywhere. With that, Jason took a deep breath and nodded. He wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but in that moment, he knew that this was a decision he couldn't undo. Illyria had trusted him, and now he had to trust himself. Illyria stepped forward, holding the glowing sphere in her hands. She gestured for Jason to sit beside her, and he did, his heart racing as he took his seat. The moment felt surreal, as though they were on the edge of something far bigger than either of them could fully comprehend. This will work, Illyria said softly, her voice filled with determination. We will understand each other, Jason. You'll see. Jason nodded, trying to push down the rising anxiety in his chest. He wanted to believe her, wanted to trust her, but a part of him was still holding back. He couldn't shake the feeling that once they crossed this threshold, things would never be the same. As Illyria held the glowing sphere between them, the room seemed to grow still. The lights flickered, and for a brief moment, Jason could have sworn he felt the pulse of the artifact in the air, a soft thrum that resonated deep within his chest. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears as the two of them sat there in silence, facing the unknown. This is it, Illyria whispered, looking at him with a mix of anticipation and trust. Jason swallowed hard, then nodded again. All right, let's do it. The moment the words left his mouth, the room seemed to shift. The air became charged with energy, and Jason could feel a strange warmth spreading across his chest. It was as if something inside him had unlocked, something he had been holding back for years. He glanced at Illyria, and in that instant, their eyes met, and everything around them seemed to fade away. He had no idea what was about to happen, but in that moment, he knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. Jason woke up the next morning with a strange feeling in his chest. The apartment seemed quieter than usual, the air thick with an energy that he couldn't quite explain. As he stretched and rubbed his eyes, the events of last night flooded his mind. The artifact, Illyria, the emotional connection they had started to build. It was still fresh, like a memory that was yet to fully settle into his bones. He sat up in bed, running a hand through his hair. The warmth from the artifact still lingered on his skin, as if it had left an imprint that was impossible to ignore. He felt a strange pull toward Illyria, but at the same time, he couldn't shake the unease that had begun to creep into his thoughts. What was happening between them? Was he ready to keep going down this path? Suddenly, a knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Jason, are you awake? Illyria's voice echoed from the other side, soft but insistent. He stood up, his legs still slightly wobbly from the emotional intensity of the previous night. He opened the door to find Illyria standing there, looking as composed as ever. But there was something different in her expression, something more vulnerable, more human. Can we talk? She asked, her eyes searching his face, as though she were looking for something he wasn't sure he could give her. Jason nodded, stepping aside to let her in. As she entered the apartment, the energy between them seemed to shift. The connection they had made the night before was still there, but it was more palpable now, like a shared secret. Illyria took a seat on the couch, and Jason followed suit, sitting across from her. The silence between them was heavy, like both of them were waiting for the other to speak first. "I've been thinking," Illyria began, breaking the silence. "About last night. About everything. The connection. I know it's new for you, and I don't want to push you, but I need to understand. I need to know how you're feeling about all of this." Jason's mind raced. How was he feeling? That was a question he had been avoiding for so long. He had spent years shutting out emotions, keeping them at bay, thinking that if he didn't acknowledge them, they wouldn't affect him. But last night had changed everything. The artifact, the emotional bond, it was like something inside him had been unlocked. And now, with Illyria sitting there, looking at him with those wide, hopeful eyes, he wasn't sure how to put his feelings into words. "I don't know," he said honestly, his voice quiet. "I mean, it's intense. I've never felt anything like this before. It's like I'm seeing the world through a different lens. I didn't think I could open up like this. And now, I'm not sure if I'm ready for what comes next." Illyria nodded, her gaze softening. "I understand. This isn't easy, Jason, but I'm not asking you to do anything you're not comfortable with. I just want to understand you better. I want us to be able to share something deeper than just our words, our touch, something that transcends that." Jason swallowed, looking down at his hands. He wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that this connection was genuine, that the fear of getting too close, of becoming vulnerable, was still there. He had been hurt before. He had learned to guard himself, to keep his emotions under lock and key. And now, with Illyria, everything felt different. It was as if she was reaching into him, trying to pull out pieces of himself that he had hidden away for years. "What do you want from me, Illyria?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I mean, I don't even know how to handle this. I've never had someone look at me like you do. I've never had someone depend on me, emotionally, like this." Illyria reached across the space between them, her hand hovering near his. She didn't touch him, but her presence was enough. The warmth from her, the comfort she radiated, it was enough to make him feel like maybe, just maybe, he could take a leap of faith. "I don't want you to feel pressured," she said softly. "I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be real. To be yourself, whatever that means. I need to know what you feel, even if it's not always easy to say. Because right now, we're both in uncharted territory. And I need you with me." Jason looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since they had started this journey together. She was more than just an alien to him now. She was someone he had come to care for, someone whose presence had become intertwined with his own. He didn't know what was going to happen next, but he realized something in that moment. He couldn't turn back. Not now. Not when it felt like he was finally starting to understand what it meant to truly connect with another being. He took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling as he gathered his thoughts. Then, for the first time in a long while, he spoke the truth. "I don't know if I can give you everything you want, Illyria, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to be here, with you, and see where this goes." Illyria's eyes softened, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. It wasn't a triumphant smile, but one that spoke of understanding, of patience. "That's all I ask for, Jason. Just be here. Be present, and we'll figure out the rest together." As the words settled between them, Jason felt a shift inside him. The fear that had been gnawing at him started to fade, replaced by something softer, something more open. He didn't have all the answers, and he probably never would. But for the first time in his life, he felt like he was ready to take a step forward, into the unknown, into whatever this connection between them would become.